Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 22, Text 37, translation and commentary by servants of the Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The mind, bound to the reactions of fruitive work, always meditates on the objects of the senses, both those that are seen in this world and those that are heard about from Vedic authority. Consequently, the mind appears to come into being and to suffer annihilation along with its objects of perception, and thus its ability to distinguish past and future is lost. Purport: one may ask how the subtle body or mind gives up its connection with one physical body and enters another. Such entering and leaving of physical bodies is called birth and death by conditioned souls. One utilizes his present senses to meditate on the visible objects of this world, beautiful women, palatial estates, and so on. And similarly, one daydreams about the heavenly planets described in the Vedas. As death occurs, the mind is pulled away from the objects of its immediate experience and enters another body to experience a new set of sense objects. As the mind undergoes total reorientation, there is the apparent loss of one's previous mentality and creation of a new mind, though actually the same mind is experiencing, but in a different way. The conditioned soul is overwhelmed by the constant flow of material experience, consisting of direct perception and abstract contemplation of the objects of this world. One thereby loses his transcendental memory of his relationship with God. As soon as one identifies with this world, he forgets his eternal identity and surrenders to the false ego created by Maya. This chapter is titled Elements of Material Creation. Sometimes in Sankhya philosophy, the soul is also counted as one of the elements of material nature, although the soul is not actually material. But there are different lists. Different Sankhya philosophers make different lists of what they consider to be the elements. Most of them include the Kamendriyas, Gyanendriyas, the objects of the senses, Rupa, Rasa, Sparsha, Gandha, Grana. And then also included are the Bhumirapa, Nalovayo, Kammano, Buddhirevacha. So the mind gets included in various categories, in the categories of which make up the subtle body, mind, intelligence, false ego. The mind is also considered as one of the senses. So the mind is included more than one sense. And then there's the soul is sometimes included with the list, because although the soul is not actually a material element, but without the soul and the super soul, the material creation doesn't take place and it doesn't function. So here it's described how the mind carries the soul from body to body to body. This is how the material cosmos is going on. Manashashtan indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. The jiva is by nature part and parcel of Krishna, as is stated in this famous verse from Bhagavad Gita. Namai vamsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. The jiva is part and parcel of Krishna, but the soul is bound up in the material elements centered around the mind, and is thus struggling with material nature. And in this way, the material cosmos is running on because of karma tantra. The words are used in this verse. Karma tantra. Tantra, who knows what Tantra means? Tantra, does anyone know what it means? What is the literal meaning of Tantra? Strategy? That's one meaning, yeah. But in this context, Karma Tantra, it actually means weaving. The word is in Bengali, tati. You have that? Tati means weaving, no? The handloom. Tati, so that comes from Tantra. So Tantra means weaving. So Karma Tantra means there's a web. The weaving means it's otam protam, the warp and the web. It's horizontal and vertical. It's all intricately involved. If you want to take out one thread, the thread, if you want to take it out, just like you see, here's the cloth. This is, what is this? Handloom khadi, looks like khadi. So, if we want to take out one, you see this is composed of threads going one way and the other way. Otam protam, it's called in Sanskrit. Going this way and this way. Now, if you want to take one thread out, can you do it? Very difficult. Even if you want to identify it, it's very difficult. It's completely bound up in this web. So we say like that, the web of material activity. Maya jal. Maya jal. The jal sometimes means some magic. But it also, jal means web, tied up in the web of material activity by the karma tantra. So it's very, very, very complex. So we can't see what are the beginnings and the end of these karmic activities. And if we compare our karmic or our lives to one thread, it's also mixed up with so many other people's. Or one thread of karma is mixed up with so many other threads. Just like why and how do we get different bodies? It would take a supercomputer to work out every little thing we do at every moment in our lives that affects what future life we're going to get. Everything we do, everything we say. Who can calculate what kind of future birth we should get? Well, that's done by better brains than us. Karmana daivane chena jantu deho bhakateye. According to our karma and under the direction of Daiva. Daiva means the Supreme Lord and also means His representatives. Under divine supervision, we get different kinds of bodies. It's all very complex. We say according to our desire we get a future body. We say, well, I desire to be Indra, but it doesn't work like that. You have to do, it's not only desire, you have to do the karma to become Indra. So if you desire, I will be the leader like Indra, a great enjoyer. So we may have that desire, but if we don't have the karma to become Indra, we may become Sharamaya Indra. Who knows what Sharamaya means? It's a Sanskrit word which means dog. We become the king of the dogs. We may be among the dogs. We may become the leader. You see, there are groups of dogs. They're running around, and one of them is the boss. One of them is the king of the dogs. So we have the desire to be the leader, but the karma is such that You don't become Indra in the heavenly planets. You become dog in the street in Chennai. And the leader. And feel it, I am the leader. So karma tantra is extremely complex. Even Lord Krishna himself states in Bhagavad Gita to understand this, what is that? Karma napi bhojavyam bhojavyam charikarma. What's the next line? Anyone remember? Gahana karma nagati is the last one. That even great learned persons, they find it very difficult to exactly differentiate between what is karma, akarma, vikarma, because this subject matter of karma, it's very deep, unfathomable. That word is there in English. Unfathomable. So, fathom literally means to find out what is the depth of a liquid body. So it's also used in an abstract sense, that we can't fathom, we can't understand, we can't find out what is the actual situation. So it's unfathomable. What is this karma? How could someone get such a body? How could King Mriga become a lizard? It doesn't seem to make any sense. He was doing so many pious activities, and just some little mistake. He didn't mean to insult the Brahmins. And they were also not very reasonable. But the fate is, in English it's said, inexorable fate. Inexorable means something that you can't overturn. It has its own power. It's inevitable. Inevitable. You can't. It's so strong. You can't overcome it. It's very, very powerful. That's why those who are trained in the science, by reading the palm, by astrology, they can predict this will happen. It's very, very powerful. Fate is very powerful. Now, the astrologer may say, well, you do some written japa or something like this. You do some japa of Lord Shiva who's conquering over death. If you want to delay your death, you might be able to, because Lord Shiva is very powerful. But death itself we cannot stop. So there may be some means of taking help of powerful demigods by doing some japa or something like this, and that will help to adjust the fate. But we cannot overcome. It's very powerful. There is one means. Instead of doing written japa, we can do Hare Krishna japa, and then Sarvadhaman Parityaja, Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, Aham Tvam Sarvaka Vedyo Moksha. We can get free from all sinful reactions by surrendering to Krishna. Sinful reactions and pious, that means that subsumes pious reactions also. Because piety is also what is called punya karma. From the Krishna conscious point of view, it's also another kind of path. Because ultimately path means forgetfulness of Krishna. And when we forget Krishna, then we come onto the Menorah. If we don't go with Krishna, if we go with Maya, we go with the mind. And according to the mind, we create different situations within this karma tantra. The mind is always active. We can't stop there. There's an idea of the impersonalists to stop the mind, that we'll stop material life by stopping the mind, by being free from all desires. It's very difficult to do. They may go to a cave in the darkness, or sit in a dark room and stop all sense perception. I mean, the room is dark, you can't see anything. It's completely silent, you can't hear anything. And you're not eating anything, so there's no taste. There's no particular smell. And touch, well, nothing to stimulate the touch because you're just sitting. And it's considered that by sitting in such a situation, one can become free from the movements of the mind, but it doesn't work. Who has tried to meditate like that? And has anyone tried to do that? Stopping the mind? Have you ever tried? Have any of you tried to do that? Just sitting and stopping the mind? Doesn't work because in the mind there is a samskar, which that also means impression. Creates an impression on the mind. So it's there, it's stored in the mind. The thought. And we also have desires. Based upon our experience, we have desires to enjoy. Based on our experience, what we have heard from others, or what we've heard just like from the Vedic literatures, we can hear about the heavenly planets, and mostly based on our imagination, that we will enjoy. That's why people have daydreams, that I will be the king. There's no kings nowadays. I will be the Prime Minister, or the Prime Ministeress, whatever, Prime Mistress, what do they call it? There's actually no word for ministeress, because women aren't supposed to be Prime Ministers. So, Prime Mistress, is it? Distress? Yeah, the prime source of suffering. So we may dream, I will enjoy, So even if we're locked in a dark, actually in our temple in Surat, in Gujarat, it's on the bank of the river Tapi, holy river. So there are many ashrams along there. And in one of those ashrams, you pay to be locked in a room for several days. And there's no light. I suppose there must be a toilet, attached bathroom. There's no light, there's no sound. You just go there and it's quiet. And they bring food once a day or something, and tea. And apart from that, you're supposed to meditate peacefully. So if you like, you can go there. You have to pay some money. And you can be put in a situation where you can't see anything, you can't hear anything. Nothing in particular to touch except the wall and the floor. You can touch your own body also if you like. Nothing to smell. I suppose they get very plain food. And nothing to taste except when they bring the food and tea. Because they don't expect you to be so austere that there won't be any tea. So you can sit and try to meditate, but so many thoughts will come in the mind. What I did in the past, and imagination, what I will do in the future, so many different plans. And imagining daydream also. I will enjoy like this, I'll get a beautiful house, I'll get a beautiful wife, so many different daydreams. So this binds us up in this material world. The mind. Due to the mind, we are caught up in this material world. Therefore, we're always advised, Savai Mana Krishna Pada. First, this is description of Ambarish Maharaj, how he fixed his mind at the lotus feet of Krishna. And there are so many other descriptions of him. Vachansi Vaikunta Kunanavan. He only spoke about topics of the spiritual world. Karo Harayamandir Marjana Dishu. He used his hand for activities of devotional service. Beginning with cleaning the temple of the Lord. And then he used his legs for going to the temple. and he used his nose for smelling the tulsi, which is offered to the Lord. So in this way, his description of how all his senses were engaged in the service of the Lord, beginning with the mind. There's one kind of philosophy which states that all existence is only in the mind. In one sense it's true. Not in an absolute sense, but in one sense it's true. That someone may say, well, this material, it only exists as much as we believe it to exist. Happiness and distress. Happiness and distress are perceived in the mind. Generally it's considered, if one has objects of happiness, sense objects that cause happiness, then he will be happy. Sense objects that are favorable for sense gratification. If one has beautiful wife, good food, nice house, then he will be happy. And if one has unpleasant wife and miserable some place to live, just like in cities in India, in the slums in Mumbai, there's one toilet shared by 30 families and one tap. And there's not always water either. So that's not, people don't daydream that, oh, I would love to be living in a room, in a slum, and which is where we share the toilet with 30 people and we have one tap and 1 hour a day. People aren't dreaming of that. That would be so wonderful. Or rather they're dreaming that I will live in a very luxurious house, beautiful house, with 30 families as my servants. These are the objects of daydreams. So generally it's considered that by getting facilities for sense gratification we'll be happy. But actually, we often see that people who do have facilities for sense gratification, they're not happy. They're full of anxiety. And often we find that people who have very limited facility for sense gratification, they're actually, relatively speaking, happy. Why is that? Because happiness and distress are ultimately within the mind. It's not that objects of sense gratification, they actually make us happy. It's only imagined as such. That's why Prahlad Maharaj speaks of material happiness as Shruti Sukha. Means we hear of it as being an object for happiness. Just like in Europe in the summer, people, they go for holidays and they're working in a factory or an office or something like that for so many weeks, actually all the year. And then they go on holiday and they imagine that, for instance, they drive from Sweden to Croatia and they drive across Europe like this, and they imagine before we go, it'll be very happy and it'll be very wonderful. But then they get caught in the traffic jams with so many thousands of people coming from, and they're stuck in their car with their family, including the dog, and they're driving, and they get caught in the traffic jams with thousands of people driving, and their traffic jam, they have their holiday for 2 weeks, and they spend 3 days, they estimate it'll take 1 day to drive, but it takes 3 days, because there's so much traffic, and they're caught, and there's no, even there are cafes on the road where they can eat, but when they go they have to wait because for 2 hours to get some meal because it's so crowded. And then they go on the beach in Croatia and there's no room to move on the beach because there are thousands of other people there. So in this way they come back and they're thinking, well, during my working life I'm so much full of stress. But then when they come back from their holiday, they're more stressed because it's just totally, they're stuck in the car with their family and the kids are screaming and the dogs barking and it's so hot, and in this way they simply suffer. So they can imagine, I will be happy. But mostly it doesn't give happiness. About 20 years ago, there was this film star, Rekha. She was very famous. And then she married one Agarwal, industrialist. So, film star means there must have been lakhs of people imagining, oh, I would like to be married to her. And eventually, someone married her. And lakhs of people were cursing him, no doubt. But then within 1 year he committed suicide. I don't know if it was because of her, but the point is that people were thinking it'd be so wonderful to marry her. But the man who did marry her, people are thinking that will be the cause of happiness, but within 1 year he committed suicide. So it's just an imagination that we shall be happy. Now, to use a somewhat gross example, but it's a realistic example, that young men, they're generally, it's not only a realistic example, it's an actual example. Young men are generally very much concerned to indulge in sex. And traditionally in India, nowadays not so much, but they have to wait to get married. So they're very anxious. Have to get married. So they're thinking that then I can enjoy sex life. But when they actually come to do it, they find that it's not as wonderful as they had imagined it would be. Because it's imagination that I will be happy by indulging in sex life. But the actual experience is not as wonderful as we imagine it to be. The pleasure is in the imagination, not in the activity. The activity, like any material happiness, the activity in and of itself does not bring happiness. But the imagination that I will enjoy, but actually there's no real pleasure there. Some pleasure that is described by Prahlad Maharaj, that is called tuchasukh, very insignificant. Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukham hi tucha. Kandu yanena karayo ivadu kadukam. He says that the happiness from sex life, it is very insignificant. It's compared to the happiness that you get when you have an itch and you scratch it. So what kind of pleasure is that? And not only, there is some pleasure, itching. Now it's the itching season. It's not so hot now, but generally this is the itch. This is the season when the mycel powder, they make prickly heat here. Mycel company, they make more. They don't make money in the winter. They make their money in this season. So the prickly, and you put this powder So when you're itching and you scratch, and there's some kind of pleasure. But what is the effect of scratching? It makes the itching more. So actually it feels like happiness, but actually it's a cause of more distress. So that is the nature of material happiness. That is imagined. The happiness itself is very insignificant. It's imagined happiness. And it causes more distress. So therefore, people who've analyzed this, just like Lord Buddha, he analyzed, and therefore the conclusion is that we should stop all desire. But it is not possible. It is the nature of the mind to be active. We cannot stop the mind acting, and it is the nature of the mind to desire. Therefore, the attempt of the impersonalists, that means those who want to be spiritualists, but without connection with Krishna, then they are trying to do something which is impossible, which is to stop all desire. Therefore, the real solution is to purify our desire. Fix the mind at the lotus feet of Krishna. That will take us out of this complex web of material activities. Anything we do that creates an impression in the mind, and that mixes with our material, with our general tendency to enjoy this material world, and that creates what is called vasana, or a tendency to, that tendency to enjoy is already there, but the tendency to enjoy in a particular way, that according to our sanskar impression, things we've heard about, what are the stock of experiences that mixes with the vasana. And from time to time, that will, just like is described like in a lake, sometimes from the muddy bottom, a bubble comes up. So that is like a specific desire. Just like we have a general desire to enjoy sexual union. But then, maybe when we see a very beautiful young lady, then that becomes focused as a specific desire to enjoy. So it's very difficult to get free from all these desires, but it is possible if we desire to satisfy Krishna. If we don't desire to satisfy Krishna, if we don't desire to satisfy Krishna's senses, then we desire to satisfy our senses, and we get different kinds of bodies depending on the kind of desires we cultivate. Shotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam ghanam cha adhishtanam manaschaiva vishayanupasevate. We get different kinds of bodies with different kind of nose, different kind of ear, different kind of eye, different kind of senses, based upon the desires for sense gratification which are fixed in the mind. That's why we get, someone will get a body of a pig, because he desires to enjoy sense gratification in a very gross way. Someone who is uncultured, they're called gross, so they get a very gross kind of body as a pig. They can eat all different kinds of food and have sex without any discrimination between mother, sister, daughter. So therefore, human beings are enjoined to at least follow the Vedic culture. That will at least help one not to fall down into gross sense gratification, into a gross existence. The Vedic culture offers in the beginning state, karma kanda, that you desire for sense gratification is there, but not so grossly. In karma kanda, those who are following, they desire to become devas, not hogs. So it's more elevated. It saves one from grossly falling down, and it brings one in contact, or the opportunity to come in contact with Krishna consciousness. But still, it is a cause of bondage in this material world. Therefore, one should purify the mind by being Krishna conscious, which is the constitutional position of the soul. Constitutional position of the soul is to always think of Krishna, always act for the satisfaction of Krishna. All the senses engaged in satisfying Krishna's senses. So, therefore, first of all, the mind. Vajahure Manda, Srinanda Nanda. The mind should be placed at the lotus feet of Krishna. This will take us out of the web of material activities. Otherwise, it's not possible. Even if we perform punya karma, we're still caught up in the web of material life. So, just like in a cloth, there may be a cloth rag for cleaning the cloth, or there may be kanchi silk sari. So that's like the rag for cleaning the cloth. That could be compared to sinful activities. And the kanchi sari or Varanasi sari, that could become silk sari, very expensive. You can pay literally lakhs, isn't it, for kanchi sari? You can order with the gold jari. You can pay lakhs of rupees. But still the web is there. You can't even see where is one thread. So actually it's in this thread, once it's become caught up in the karma tantra, it's impossible to take it out. Can't take it out. That is possible only by Krishna's intervention. Sarvadhaman parityata mamekam sharanam aham tvam sarvapāpa mokshe sharanam. Here Krishna is explaining in some detail the same points which he's explained in Bhagavad Gita, and the conclusion is the same. That we should surrender to Krishna for our own highest benefit. So Krishna is analyzing in this way how we're bound up, so we can just understand this and come to the intelligent conclusion that I should surrender to Krishna. So that's the conclusion of every Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's the conclusion of all these shastras. Surrender to Krishna. Hare Krishna. Any question about this? Oh, please. Which are the senses that are being carried? Well, that's all the senses are. I just quoted that verse from Gita. Krishna explains that. Shrotram chakshur sparshna chavasam dharanam adhishtanam manaschaiva vishayanupasevata. The senses, seeing, touching, hearing, tasting, feeling, smelling, they are grouped around the mind. Just like we see something that is processed in the mind. And therefore we tend to think of different objects as good or bad, according to the mind. Just like if you see a lump of meat, you'll think, oh, very bad. You'll process this in the mind, it's very bad, I don't like that. But if a Muslim sees, or most Hindus also, for that matter, they'll think, oh, very nice, very good. So, all the senses are grouped around the mind. The mind is the center. So these senses are carried, and they redevelop according to the desire of the mind to enjoy different senses. He gets a different kind of body. Just like if we have the desire to eat meat, then we may become a tiger, according to the mind. So the senses here doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that we bring the same nose, no, but we get another nose, which is suitable for fulfilling the desires which are there in the mind. That's why pig's body, a specific kind of body, according to evolutionary theory, it has evolved. The body of a pig has evolved, but no, this kind of body is given by material nature, in one sense according to evolution, because as we develop different kinds of desires, we get that kind of body. But it's not evolution according to Darwinian theory, but according to the desires that we have evolved, we get different kinds of bodies. That verse is quoted, that's from chapter 13 of Gita, in which Krishna explains this subject, how we're going from body to body. And then what's that other one after that? About how we're, just like the wind carries the aromas. What's that verse? Yeah, let's look at that. Maybe it's chapter 15. No? Yeah, here it is, chapter 15. Oh yeah. Shariram yadavavnopi yat chap yudkramatisvaraha Vahitvaitani sangyati vayagandha nivashayat. Chapter 15. That we get different bodies. It's just like the air carries the aroma from one place to another. So we're carried from one body to another. The aroma is produced in one place from a flower or whatever, and is carried to another place by the wind. So in the same way, the mind, in one body we produce so many desires, and that carries us to another body. The example is given. Hare Krishna. We'll finish there.